So we're just going to be playing around in my garage. I'm going to try and show you a few things. This isn't a super polished tutorial video. This is just messing around with substrates and learning a little bit about soil physics. Certainly if there's demand for more, we can show more. But I just want to start opening up your eyes to what's possible. So let's get started. All right, so you'll remember from last time how we demonstrated that in these tracks, this is forces towards the left generated this, and forces towards the right generated this. And clearly that's impossible to confuse. There's no way to mistake that. So let's expand on that. So you could call this pressure against the wall of the track is what we're creating. We're creating a track and we're doing pressure against the side, right? One way or the other. Forward, back, left, right, whatever, right? So what if we separated that into three different directions of pressure? Pressure that was down towards the base of the wall, pressure that was to the middle of the wall, or pressure that was to the top of the wall. What would create these different pressures? Well, we'll get into that more later, but to begin with, what creates them is downward pressure into the track. So if intense downward pressure is right next to the wall, you'll get pressure towards the bottom of the wall. If there's a more even spread of pressure across the track and there's a push against the side of the wall, it'll be against the middle of the wall. And if there's very little pressure in this area next to the wall of the track, and yet the track maker hits the wall, it'll be up against the top of the wall. That's enough to get us started. So here's my block. I'm going to create a track with intense downward pressure. I'm going to push really hard on it, and I'm going to push that way. There we go. Now look at that. You'll see that there's this kind of shearing effect. The forces went deep and wide, right? Let's then have a more even pressure across the track. And I'm just going to kind of scoot more it to the left, right? So here you'll see that there's like intense building forces here that sheared off a chunk. Here it's much thinner, right? It's much more subtle. Okay, and then now we're going to do pressure against. I'm going to be mostly pressuring on this side, but I'm going to still push to that side. So we're going to scoot. So here we'll notice that there is a really fine, I'm hoping you can see it, a really fine sort of ridging of material, right? Now this soil is very compact here. This had much more give to it. So don't let that confuse you. What we have are three different ways pressure is being generated to the side of the track by a stiff, unyielding, squared off, flat surface. But this is going to tell you immense amounts of information, right? If you have a track that is displaying one of these three characteristics, right? Like there is nothing, I mean, look closely, there is nothing here. There was no pressure exerted against the side of the wall, but here there very clearly was, right? Here, there was no pressure exerted against this side of the wall, but it's deep. It's clearly deep. Here, it's not deep at all, but what is this like scooping or building of material slightly along this outer edge? Something happened. And this, of course, is the most obvious of all. Very little pressure on this side, loads of pressure here, and then this huge effect, right? You can play with this in one substrate after another, and you'll see it expressed over and over and over. Slightly different ways, but the principle always stays the same. So I'm trying to get us some nice low light so you can really see this. But again, you know, the 2 dimensions of video might not make it as obvious as it would be in person. I encourage you to play with this yourself. But let's take our block, right? And let's make intense downward pressure next to the direction in which I'm going to be pushing the block, right? And if I take this block, intense downward pressure, and I move it this way, take it away, there we have that same activity, right? Intense depth. You have the building, right? Look how thick, this thick band of material, right? Whereas, like, if I do something and I just, let's say I do the opposite. In order to create pressure against the top of the wall, so that was at the bottom of the wall, to create pressure at the top of the wall, I'm going to make downward pressure on the opposite side. So intense downward pressure over here, and yet it's going to be scooted that way. There we go. All right? So that may not look like much, but you can see the airspace that's been created, material's been lifted, right? It looks totally different than over here. You can see the flattening of the track bed as a whole, right? You can see the depth on this side. Again, if you don't see this on video, don't fret. Go ahead and do it in person and develop an eye for it in person, right? But it's, if nothing else, if maybe you're worried that, well, this is easy to see, but this is really hard to see, well then, like, okay, that's great. At the very least, you can see these kinds of pressure releases. You'll know that the head moved this way, right? Or there were some forces generated with pressure at their most intense this way, right? Sometimes you can have counterbalancing effects, but that's all part of the journey. Let's take our block. I'm going to create intense downward pressure right next to the direction of where I'm pushing it. Over here, I'm going to create intense downward pressure on this side and then push it that way. All right. So the question is, what is causing the pressure in the tracks that we would be looking at? Like, where's that pressure coming from? And for our purposes, there's one answer that is useful to get us started, and that is the head, the bowling ball of the head. Wherever the head goes, that's where the pressure is going. If the head goes down, the pressure is going to go that way. If the head goes this way, right, that's what's going to be generating the pressure. Now, what's interesting is, if you know anything about martial arts, or you do any physical sports, you'll know that wherever the head goes, the body follows. It's an axiom, right? So this is super useful for us. We know to look for the pressure releases and how they're generated, because what they're telling us about is the head. Where's the head going? And so when that trail is lost, when we're suddenly missing a track, by looking at the pressure releases, it will tell us, oh, well, the head exerted forces this way, so let's check out that direction, right? Yeah, it can be as simple as that. So thanks for watching. This has been Willem Larsen with Fernando Moreira's Professional Tracking Services, and I hope you enjoyed yourself, and stay tuned for more.